welcome back to the Chatterjack Podcast. Today I'm joined by Gemma Leadbetter from BEC, and I'm going to ask Gemma just to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Gemma from BEC. As Lindsay said, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at BEC, and I'm based at Westlake Science Park at Ingwell Hall there. My role's pretty diverse there. Predominantly I'm in charge of the finance function, but I also look after marketing, IT, and do a lot of work on our social impact projects.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gemma. Thank you. So, being a COO, Chief Operating Officer.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that role. What does a day-to-day look like? What does a typical week look like? Could you run through that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the answer to that is that there isn't a typical sort of day or week or anything like that. It's a really varied role, which I love. You know, it really plays to my strengths and stuff. And like I say, on a business as usual front, it encompasses managing the finance function, the marketing function within our business, and also IT and sort of back office services, if you like, the kind of the foundation for me that any business needs to have. And so the team that are involved in that. And the other aspect of it around the projects, that's the bit that is, you know, that's the bit that I get really excited about. So there's a huge amount of work goes into that. I do business case development, so that's sort of looking at our assets and looking at what that might be. So sort of taking an idea, a vision, and putting the meat onto the bones there. Working a lot with funders. We're obviously pretty dependent on sort of grant and social impact funding for a lot of the work that we do. So there's a big element of the relationship management and building there, and then also working with partners. So we are property developers, but we're not SME, you know, business support. We're not gaming companies. So our partnerships are critical to our business and to how we deliver services. So that's another element, is finding the right partners, making sure we're aligned in terms of our values and our aspirations for a project. But then that relationship has to be managed over the long term and guided and developed. And you know this, being a resident in the bus station, which is one of our, you know, our major sort of project that we've sort of undertaken to date, how that's sort of transformed over the time period that you've been a resident here. So every day's, you know, different. I do spend a lot of time sitting at a desk behind a screen though, so I would say that don't think that I'm dead excited and gallivanting around the place. It is you know, predominantly quite a desk-based role that I undertake, but I do get to do site visit. I was at the former Whittles building this week as well, so I do get to see how things are moving on, and that's really nice to see as well.
Nice. Fantastic, thank you. And for our listeners that don't really know much about BEC, could you kind of explain that, what BEC does and how that functions, how it operates?
Yeah, absolutely. So BEC has kind of two key strands to its business. Ultimately, the reason the business exists is to promote jobs and enterprise. So it has a very sort of social impact mission, if you like. But what we also do is we manage significant commercial let estate around West Cumbria. So we're the landlord for Westlake Science Park, and there are 13 buildings on the park. We also have Blencathra Business Centre that is near Threlkeld, and then we have the bus station and a couple of other individual properties. So that kind of core business activity, as we see it, involves the estate management, the facilities management, the grounds maintenance of the property estate, and that's how we make our money. That money funds our running costs of the let estate, but it also funds predominantly our staff overhead cost in terms of project delivery. And we do predominantly development projects. They're generally centred around a building or you know, land. Obviously the bus station being one, Levels, which is the redevelopment of the former Whittles furniture store in Whitehaven, being another that is ongoing at the moment, and also Revive furniture recycling project, which is another social impact project, and that's transforming the former Focus factory site at Myris. So we ultimately the aim with those projects is to deliver a sort of community benefit, to create jobs, to support people that are vulnerable and so on. In addition to that, we do also obviously have a commercial property portfolio aspect. So, we own quite significant land holdings in the area, and we're exploring the potential of different projects, such as bringing a hotel to the area. And those are commercial in nature. So that's not necessarily dependent on grant funding or anything. That is a real commercial development for the area. So it sounds complicated. It's pretty actually simple. We build amazing stuff, and to use our slogan, we look to build extraordinary communities. So that's what we're here to try and do.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So you've been with BEC for around 7-8 years?
Yeah, I was just working this out this morning, actually. Just over 8 years that I've been with BEC.
Amazing. And you started there was it in the head of finance?
So I started as head of finance in October 2017, and then I've progressed through the organisation. So after Derek's retirement, I then moved into the director of finance role, which was reasonably similar, but with a more sort of strategic directive, and then more latterly into the CEO role. So really sort of Michael's kind of second in command, if you like, and that's been a fantastic progression opportunity, and I think really has allowed me to take quite a transferable skill set and sort of run with it a bit, and obviously Michael provides a lot of support for me in terms of my growth and trajectory in that role, which is really good. It's been really satisfying.
Fantastic. I'd love to hear about your transferable skills, so I'm gonna peel it back, because I want to unravel all of what those skills are and where they've come from. So I guess really sort of early Gemma, and being at school and all of that kind of thing. What kind of things would have been on your school report?
So when my gran died, I actually found my first ever school report, which she had kept, and I still have this now. One of the things that my teacher had said on there, that I showed a very quiet determination to do things my own way, and I was pretty content sort of doing things on my own, playing on my own, quite an introverted person. Nobody ever believes me when I say that I am naturally an introvert. So that's definitely something that I recall from my school report, and I think that the others would probably mirror that. High school was pretty difficult for me. I didn't enjoy it. I'm not going to beat around the bush with that at all. I found it really, really difficult. I went from being one of the top of my class and things to really not putting the effort in and stuff like that, and ultimately left school with 9 GCSEs, but one good GCSE, grade C. So that was quite difficult in many ways, and whilst sitting here today and where I am now, I'm like, it didn't matter. But at the time, I felt pretty stupid that I had not sort of taken a slightly longer term view on life and things like that. But, it is what it is. That's in the past. And, I think you're a product of your past experiences. It taught me a big lesson, for sure, that I've definitely taken into sort of, further education and adult life.
So being sort of at school, and did you have a particular affinity with any subject, the subject that you did the best in? What subject was that?
So my one GCSE that I got a good grade in was maths, so that's probably not a massive surprise, but the thing that I was actually most passionate about at school was art and was textiles. I really, really wanted to be a fashion designer. When I was at school, I used to personalise my own clothes. I know you wouldn't guess it now because I'm so boring, but when I was younger, I absolutely loved clothes, and I loved sewing, and I would just rip things to shreds and put inserts in them and things like that. So I was really, really creative. Loved art, loved drawing, painting, modelling, plasticine, things like that. I was always sort of just tinkering away with something. So I'm a bit weird, I guess, in that regard, and that I do have quite an analytical sort of brain, but also very creative. But I think that's probably why I'm quite good at what I do, and I actually really took to it like a duck to water. So yes, I wanted to be a fashion designer, but then I kind of, as a lot of people do, I didn't pursue my passion, and I did have the opportunity to, but I sort of took a thought of, well, maybe I need to be sensible. Maybe I need to pursue a backup plan. Maybe I need to do something a bit more traditional. And then it was just the way things fell. The opportunity came around to undertake the modern apprenticeship, and I was successful in securing that role. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
Wow.
But I do still sew, and this week in particular, I have had to take about 6 inches off my trousers for holiday because I'm really short. Yeah, I accidentally took an extra inch off because I cut it where I meant them to be instead of where the hem was meant to go, so I had to take them all up.
Wow, that's really, really cool. And that, like you say, that sort of creativity, and then the numbers, the facts, the figures, they're quite contrasting.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, in how they come about. So really, really interesting. So I guess then coming through your sort of career, so you went off and you did your modern apprenticeship. So did you do that straight from school? Did you apply?
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. So after I'd got my GCSE results, obviously that meant that I couldn't do A levels basically. So I did go back to school and explore the options that I could do then. Really, I was limited to doing a VQ, and it was at the time, I think it was in health and social care. That was not.
And when you say a VQ for our listeners, just tell me what a VQ is.
So vocational qualification. So I guess you'd maybe look at that as being similar to maybe a BTEC, T-level, that sort of thing nowadays. So and that was all that I could do, and it wasn't many days, and it wasn't exciting to me. I didn't want to spend my time doing that, so I thought, well, actually, I'm going to get a job. I'd always worked. I mean, my dad's a shepherd, so we'd grown up working, basically. You know, you do a lot of jobs on a farm and things, and I'd had paid employment from being about probably 11 or 12. You know, I used to go beating, I used to work in a chip shop, I used to make sandwiches on the weekends, I've done all sorts of stuff. So for me, I thought, you know, I'm going to get a job and see where it takes me. And I was really lucky because the lady Liz, who managed the council's apprenticeship scheme, actually lived locally on the farm where I grew up. So I just popped down to see her to have a chat and sort of say, you know, can you give me a bit of advice? And she said, well, actually, there's an apprenticeship coming up shortly at a local firm at Whipperton, which was just out of the nearest place. And why don't I put you forward for it? It's for an accounting apprenticeship. You've got a C in maths. That ticks the box for them. So so I went along to that, and I was successful in doing that. It was actually awful as well because I had to interview against my best friend, which I didn't know until I got there and saw her sitting there. So that was really difficult, but I was really fortunate. I was, like I say, a lot of hard work, but a lot of luck at good times. I feel like I've been pretty fortuitous with things like that. And I got offered that opportunity at A&J Scott Limited, the company was called, and they were timber merchants. So I joined them as an accountant apprenticeship, new purpose-built office. It was like coming into the bus station on day one. Gorgeous. I had my own office. You know, I was 16. I had my own huge, beautiful office. You know, my own computer. Honestly, I thought it was absolutely great. And I loved it there. Rosemary, the company accountant, was such a great mentor. She was, you know, just so intelligent but also so fun, you know. I mean, it was great. It was a really fantastic environment to come up in, and I was surrounded by, you know, amazing people that supported me, and that gave me the opportunity to go and work in Manchester for a bit, and Newcastle as well when they expanded. So it was fab. So I did my AAT qualification through what was at that time North Tyneside College with them, and I did all of the exams and stuff, and I was just good at it. I was good at computers. And I know that sounds sort of silly, but at that point in time, you know, IT in the workplace was relatively new. The first system I used was the sort of Skull Unix one, which was the sort of black and green screen. People that are old enough will know. But in my first year of being there, they decided to upgrade their IT system and bring in Windows PCs, and they gave me the opportunity to support a lot of that activity and do the data transfer and stuff like that. And that was great because I didn't do well at GCSEs as part of my apprenticeship, and the timing of it. From the February to the September, I actually did key skills through the local authority as well. So I did 5 key skill qualifications around numeracy, literacy, IT, working with others and sort of managing your own learning.
Fantastic.
And that was great. Honestly, the skills that I got from those were so in terms of workplace readiness were brilliant.
Yeah.
So that really helped me and kind of kicked off a bit of a love for IT and how easy it can make your life when you know how to use it well. So that was really good. Yeah.
Amazing. So you did your AAT qualification
Yeah.
there. So just for everyone else, an AAT qualification is...
So that is the Association of Accountant Technicians, and they still operate now. So
Yeah.
it's generally seen as a sort of bookkeeping level qualification or a precursor to a professional accountancy qualification.
Fantastic. So you were kind of sort of late teens, early 20s at this point. So
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was 21, I think, when I left there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you look back on that chapter as it set you up, and it
Yeah.
you kind of learned to communicate with
Yeah, and I
people.
got to move to a city,
Yeah.
which having grown, I mean, I can't understate how tiny the place I grew up was. You know, it was tiny. There's about at that time there's about 2,000 people lived in the proximity of Wooler. We lived on a farm
Yeah.
about 7.5 mile out of that only house for a couple of miles. You know, it was
Wow.
very isolated. So to have the opportunity at 19 to go to Manchester for a year when the Commonwealth Games was there as well, the
Amazing.
city was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic experience. And then I did go to the Tyneside branch for a year after that as well, because I got homesick. Actually, as much as I loved Manchester, I did get homesick, and so I moved back sort of up north, if you like. But yeah, it was great and a great grounding, you know, really, really good grounding. Got the opportunity to get involved in a lot of different things there. And that was really helpful. I had my first leadership role actually when I went to the Manchester branch as well, which was scary and you know, but you learn a lot from those kind of scary situations for sure.
You were quite exposed to the structure of a business from pretty early on.
Yeah,
Would you say
absolutely.
That was true?
I mean, that was what was so great about it is Rosemary, like I say, gave me opportunities to get involved in lots of things. I did a lot of transactional work there as well. But she really built up the responsibility quite quick. So I started off processing purchase invoices for payment. And then she would prepare them for payment, sort of decide what was getting paid. But then after a little while, she was like, right, this is your weekly budget. You decide, make sure we don't get put on stop with anybody. And so, and it just sort of built from there. And then I got involved in things like cash flow forecasting. So at that time, the business was really expanding. We were looking to get grant funding to build new mills and things like that. So I got to get involved in those processes, and that would involve working with external accountancy firms and things like that as well, and acquisitions as well. So we acquired a branch at Manchester, as I said, another company at Manchester, and also another company at Tyneside. So I also got to be involved in that as well. So yeah, I mean, for a young person, got great exposure to a real breadth of different things.
You had all that really great grounding, and then you kind of moved positions. You sort of changed into. Did you go straight to the council at that point?
No, I didn't. So I moved around a little bit. So when I went back to the Tyneside branch, there I did enjoy it, but it did feel like a big step back. It was a lot smaller, and it just the way that actually came about is I had actually handed in my notice when I was at the Manchester branch because I was homesick. I'd been looking for a job nearer to home. It never occurred to me to ask them if I could move back, which in hindsight you should ask the question about things because you never know. If you're a good employee, you know that they'll find a home for you often. So I'd actually been offered a role for another company. And I was, and it had progression, so that was really exciting. And I think it was about a month before I was due to start, the CEO there had actually contacted me and asked me if I would, basically take information, palette designs and things like that, and bring them with me. So that was and on the phone I just panicked and I was like, oh my God, I'll see what I can do and sort of thing. And I was like, I can't work there. So I was like, I can't go there. I can't do that. That's, wrong. So it was a really difficult time because I was like, what do I do? Because I can't not have a job. So I did then pick up the phone to my sort of compatriot at the head office and I said, this has happened. What am I going to do? I really want to move home, And she then spoke to the MD and to Rosemary, the company accountant, and they said, well, come to the Tyneside branch. So they did do me a massive favour in that regard, but it just wasn't a good fit. It felt like a huge step backwards. And there was nothing about it that was exciting, and that's not to be disparaging, but I'd done all this really exciting stuff, and I was like, oh, I'm not really learning anything here. It's not even very challenging. It was very quiet. You were on your own a lot. It just wasn't for me. So I was there about a year, and then I decided I'm going to move on from there. So I actually took a bit of a sideways step into a role that wasn't then accountancy. So I took a role with a local consultancy firm that was mitigation based. So they were going through a period of really rapid growth. Basically, they were arboricultural consultancy firm. Most of the south of England is clay based. Okay, so when it gets hot, it shrinks, makes the houses crack and stuff. And when you've got vegetation in the vicinity, that exacerbates that issue a lot. So what they did was very specialist consultancy, and their head office was based in Alnwick in Northumberland, with most of the consultants based down south. So when my first day I went in, and there was a pile of reports, like handwritten reports about 3 foot high on the desk, and they all had to be converted into digital reports. So that was basically my job. I was taken on temporarily to help them work through a backlog of stuff, and it was great. I loved it. And it was like going back to the sandwich factory. So I loved the sandwich factory, and because it was quite a monotonous job. And so for me, I used to set myself like little competitions. How many egg sandwiches can I make in the next 10 minutes and things, and be very systematic about things. So this worked really well for me. Everybody else would just take the next report off the pile. I was like, no, I'll sort them into order of who they're for, because different clients wanted a different format report and stuff. So once you were in the swing of some, and the Royal and Lions ones were super easy to do. They want very minimal information. The layout was great. Get through them. So my 3 foot went to 1 foot pretty quickly and stuff like that. And that was really satisfying. So I was super fast, but more importantly, really accurate. So the MD recognised this, and he was like, this is great. We need to keep you. Let's give you a permanent job. And once we'd got on top of the backlog, and they knew obviously that I had an accountancy qualification, an opportunity came up there as well. So I then moved into the accountancy function then, but also took on a bit of a sort of office managerial role there as well, which was not actually a great leadership opportunity. I didn't enjoy it there. I think partly it's because I'd gotten to know the people quite well. It was different when I went to Manchester, because I didn't know them. They were just people I was coming in. I'm sort of going to look after you. That was fine. This was different. These were people that I'd hung out with. We were friends. It was totally different experience, and I definitely found that really difficult. But the job there for me was great, because I wasn't very confident, and a big part of mitigation is about having to speak to people. I'll be over the phone, but you're still speaking to a lot of people, but you have to be super persuasive. You'd be surprised how attached people get to their trees. They've planted this tree in memory of their late grandfather, or in one case this lady thought that there were fairies living in the tree. I had neighbours who'd lived next to each other for 20 years and had a great relationship, that looked after each other. Kids falling out over the fact that this tree was going to get cut out. So I really, really kind of crafted the art of being persuasive, being empathetic, understanding where each party was coming from, but also being quite strong, that ultimately I totally understand, Lindsay, that you love your tree and you don't want it to go, but your neighbour's going to sue you for everything your house is worth. It really helped me, and I think that's a skill actually that I've took right through my career, that ability to be persuasive, to understand the other person's perspective, and sometimes to compromise, because often that's a solution and things as well, but to be persuasive and to sort of look at the options and things. So that was really good. And then I met my oldest daughter's dad, and he lived at Sunderland, so I left there and took an agency role for a company called Paragon and Sunderland, who were a manufacturing company. That was a credit control role. Again, my persuasion skills became really important there as well. So that was quite a good role. They'd bought a company called Asia down in Littleworth, so they'd taken on a lot of bad debt. So I was working to bring that up to speed, and again, really good at that. It's great when you're good at stuff, isn't it? You feel so satisfied. So I would love seeing my debt coming down all the time, and got on top of that. And then I'd actually been visiting my dad over here. So Paul and I had been looking at
Yeah.
properties. We decided we wanted to get on the property ladder. Really expensive around the northeast for us anyway. It's all
Yeah.
relative, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we'd been visiting my dad, who by that point had moved to a farm just outside of where's the nearest place that people will know, Lockerbie. And I was looking in the paper there, and the properties were really cheap.
Yeah.
So me and Paul were like, maybe we should do a little sideways move here. Nice part of the world. And kind of on a bit of a spur of the moment, we're like, well, let's see if we can get jobs and stuff like that. So I signed up with Hayes Recruitment Agency.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they got me the interview at DHL. So at that point in time, there was a DHL site at Dumfries which dealt with all that Irish services. So basically all your cider.
Yes.
Yeah, there was the most interesting job interview that I've ever had as well. So when I turned up for that, Danny, who was interviewing us, actually had no front teeth and 2 black eyes. So we had the whole interview, had to just pretend like this was totally a normal occurrence, you know. And at the end, he said, do you have any questions for me? So I was like, yeah. What did you do to your face? And he said, you know what? You're the 6th person I've interviewed, and nobody has asked me what I've done. So, and do you know when and it was just like click. We just clicked from that moment on time. It was like, we are people that can definitely work well together and stuff. And so I got offered the job there, and that was us. We moved ourselves from Sunderland, over to Dumfries. Stayed with my dad for a year. They had a really big property on the farm at the time there. So we bunked up, if you like, with them, and that was nice because I got to build a closer relationship with my younger siblings. My dad's obviously he's remarried, and I've got 4 younger siblings in addition to the rest of us. So that was really good, and DHL was again a really fun place to work, really interesting. Danny was brilliant. That was where my analytical skills really got developed there. They were just a great organisation for the sort of spotted talent, pushing you, giving you different opportunities. I used to go to Bells Hill every month to do the month end there, so that was great. Got to stay in hotels overnight. I got to go to Ireland. I'd never really travelled with work and stuff like that, so that was really good. And I loved it there. And then obviously I fell pregnant with Evie while I was working there. And unfortunately they decided to close the branch at Dumfries. It did make sense, to be fair. Financially it did make a lot of sense, but they closed that branch. So they offered me a role down in Liverpool. We'd just bought the house. I was on maternity leave at the time. I didn't want to do that move, so I took redundancy, and then was sort of out of work with a little baby and like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? So it was that point that I joined the council. So I'd been job hunting for a while. I kind of knew that I was going to get made redundant pretty much not long after I'd given birth to Evie. So I think it was sort of the January time we kind of knew.
And you were in that sort of that finance analyst role, so you're probably really exposed to the facts, the figures, the numbers, everything that was happening with the company. You could see that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it, like I say, it totally made sense to shut that branch. The traffic planning element could have been done from everywhere. It was a very big site as well, so good land value there for DHL. And I don't know what they actually did with the site like longer term, but they had the site up at Bells Hill, and they did sort of operate on kind of a regional structure basis anyway. So it did make sense to do that, definitely. You could administer it all really efficiently from other areas and stuff like that. But it was really interesting. It was good seeing we were sited with the traffic planners as well, so with the logistics team. So that was really good to actually see that aspect of the business as well, and just see how they kind of coordinated things, and really intense. I imagine like being in like a newsroom or a war room or something like that is really always that. And something that costs a logistic business a lot of money is empty running. So you've got to take your product to one place, but can you bring something back and charge somebody else for it.
Yeah.
So, you know, they were so clever at trying to make sure that they were always full and things like that. And, you know, different personalities as well. So you had drivers there. So you're talking with people doing quite different roles and sort of different views on life. Very high pressure there.
Because it'll be
So
quite time sensitive, a lot of it as well. So
oh,
time.
massively, yeah. I mean, I would never, honestly, I take my hat off to lorry drivers. I would never want to do that job. It must be the most stressful thing in the world, you know.
So like all through that sort of chapter, I'm hearing a lot of communication, a lot of relationship building.
Yeah.
You kind of knew a lot about yourself as well. It seems like you were quite sure in, this is what I do, this is what I'm really good at, and you knew very early on, actually, this is what I'm really hot at.
Yeah. I think something that my dad probably in particular instilled in us with it from quite a young age is a really good work ethic, and a bit of a he's quite a hard man, my dad, right? So you know that if you want to like win and succeed and all that kind of thing, you've got to get there. You've got to put that effort in. So definitely taught us really great work ethic. You know, the importance of kind of like putting in that effort and stuff like that. You know, I think and to go for it and to not be scared and stuff. So like I say, this terrifies me, but I'm here.
Yes.
And I don't say no to things very often at all. And in fact, probably more so the things that scare me. I think that's where growth, it sounds so cheesy, doesn't it? I'm sure it's a quote somewhere, but that is where the growth happens and stuff like that, is when you put yourself out of your comfort zone. And, you know, I always knew that if it went wrong, right, I've got a good family unit around us and stuff like that. You know, they're always going to pick you up and look after you and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So I never really at that point probably felt like I had a lot to lose if things did go wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, if you ask me now, I've got responsibilities now.
Yeah.
So it is a bit different. But certainly when I was young, I think that you know, just to go for it and to experiment, to try stuff and to give it a go, you know, you should do that. Like, you can make mistakes when you're young and stuff, and it's totally recoverable. You can make them when you're older as well. But it's, you know, you don't tend to carry the weight of other responsibilities and stuff when you're young. So
life gets really serious really quickly.
Yes,
if you let it.
It does.
And I think today, our young people are. I've got quite a bit of that pressure.
I wouldn't want to be young now. And I don't mean that to sound like awful. I think the opportunities for young people now are immeasurable. And that's really exciting. But the pressure on people to sort of decide what they're going to be really early and to, you know, be amazing and to come through the school environment, which, let's be honest, it doesn't suit everybody. And, you know, I think you've got some fantastically gifted and talented young people out there that are not going to walk out of school with 9 AGCSEs or equivalent and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean they don't have a huge amount to offer. And you know, so for me, I think something I'd really like to see in the workforce and stuff is different kind of recruitment practices and stuff like that. That you know, take a broader view on, you know, what does a talented individual look like for our business, relevant to that sector or whatever. And
it's really, really interesting to unravel that. And then you've obviously you started then working then at the council. You were sort of in that position. I've had a great time and all that sort of thing. Did a bit of a reassess and then went to work at the council. I've got it written down. Did you start there as accountant technician?
I was an accountant technician, so
so that's different to being a finance analyst, right?
Yeah, it was. So I'll be honest, when I went to the council, I wasn't really sure what they wanted, but I was like, well, you know, is this bookkeeping? It was very different to anything I'd done before. So the kind of key things is in the private sector, things happen really quickly, and it's all about making as much money as possible, or, you know, spending as little as possible. You know, it's about profit at the end of the day. And it was a really different focus in the council. The numbers were a lot bigger for a start. You know, you're talking millions all the time. But also it was a lot more reactive. It was a lot more reporting on what had happened, and not a lot of looking forwards at what might happen. So that was really interesting for me because my IT skills meant that I was great at reporting on what had happened. You know, that was really easy, just pull the figures out the system and stuff like that. But that kind of forward looking wasn't great there. So that was something with my background. I was just able to really hit the ground running at the council, and you know, work with my budget holders, all of the things that I'd done to that point. Like, it just felt like the coming together of something really beautiful. You know, I had all of this kind of stuff in my arsenal that just made me really great in that role. So I could interrogate the IT systems well, but I was used to forecasting and planning forwards and things. So I was able to work really closely with my budget holders and much more in a kind of business partnering type role, to, you know, really help them to sort of look at what they could do you know, have you got a budget pressure here, or are you going to underspend? How do we use that? You know, big thing, and it is true, or it was at that time in the councils, you've got to spend your money or it might get to coffee and things. So, you know, really helping them to make more strategic decisions around things was pretty important there. And again, I was so lucky to be blessed with Stephen as my line manager there. Stephen had come from the private sector, super experienced, qualified accountant. You know, he had decades of experience, and one of the most brilliant people as well, so kind, like so invested in your future. He'd tell me all the time that I reminded him of his wife Susan, and he'd seen her professional growth, and they didn't have any children, unfortunately. They couldn't, and I do feel like he almost sort of semi-adopted me a little bit, you know. And the best thing about Stephen for me was he was quite near the end of his career, so you know, for him there was no ego in it or anything like that. He was like, go to this meeting, do this thing, you know, all this, and just gave me like opportunity after opportunity to sort of step up and do things. And the confidence that gives you when you've got somebody in your corner saying, go, make a mistake, it doesn't matter, I'll pick you up, it'll be fine, I'll take the blame. I mean, that's like something else. So, you know, that was just amazing working with Stephen. And the big reason that I took the role at the council as well, because I was offered another role at the same time, was that they did do a training scheme. So I had my AAT qualification. But I wanted to take that next step. I wanted to be a professional accountant. I can do this, you know, all of that from GCSEs, you know. That was then, this is now, I can do this, I can study, I can apply myself. And that was a big thing for me, was that I wanted that opportunity. So when I took the job, I just thought that was a foregone conclusion, to be honest, that if you wanted to do your SIP for qualification, you would be able to. But when it came about, it was actually a competitive process. So that's your Chartered Institute of Public Finance accountants. So there are many different accountancy qualifications available, but the public finance one does focus very much on the public sector. But I think for me, what's interesting about that qualification is it's not pure finance. You actually do a lot around things like HR management, strategic HR management, governance is a big element, politics and public policy. Ethics was massive in it, project management, control systems, you know, business structures. So it was really, really interesting. Really interesting. So I was successful, obviously, because I'm sitting here today with my CPFA designation, very proud of that. and that was very, very hard, with a small baby at home and a full-time job and studying. And the model that CIPFA adopted then was online delivery. So they were quite an early adopter to that sort of approach. And the person that had completed it before me in the local authority had actually won 2 awards as well for being like amazing. I failed one exam in the early stages, and the way the council operated was you had your first chance and a resit, and after that you had to pay for any others yourself. And if you couldn't get through it, then you'd be taken off the scheme. So there was a degree of pressure there for sure. And I used to study in the emergency bunker actually at the council. So at Dumfries and Galloway, they have Chapel Cross. So they had a nuclear bunker basically. So I used to study in there, which was a great environment in terms of like privacy and stuff. And I had an office in there that was basically mine for studying. So I had my whiteboard with my motivators on it and things, because you know, you do forget sometimes it can get a bit tough, and you know, you do sometimes have to sit and think, God, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? Is it going to be worth it? You know, this pain right now and this sort of sacrifice. So, you know, I had my picture of Evie up there and things like that. And you know, so yeah, but I enjoyed the CIPFA qualification. It was really good, and very emotive journey through that. a big part of it as well is you have to do a portfolio. You have to do a lot of reflection, which I've never really done a lot of that before, you know, or thinking about how could I have done things better, and I just assumed that I was always meant, you know what I mean? If it'd gone well, that was great. But really got me into that sort of learning from experience as well through the portfolio work and things. And I did my final 2 exams. So I did my strategic leadership exam, and also you do a sort of final test of professional competence, which is an all-day exam. You get pre-seen material, and it's a sort of real scenario, and you have to do a lot of work on that. So I got my results through for my last 2 exams, and I'd failed my strategic leadership exam by 2 marks, I think. So I cried. I cried in front of all my colleagues. I was devastated. Thought, and part of the reason was that the job that I was going for, the finance officer job that I was going for, was advertised at that time, and you had to be CCAB qualified to get it. So I was devastated, and I went in to see my boss, Paul Garrett, the head of finance there, and I was like, I failed this exam. And he was like, why are you so upset? And I was like, well, I can't apply for the job. He said, don't be silly. You know that job's yours. Don't be silly. He says, you're just not going to be able to go in at the same rate of pay, and you'll need to resit. So that did put my mind to rest, but I still had to go through the interview process, and I wasn't the only one. So I took that really seriously. Best interview I've ever had. I was super concise, which, you know, is not my skill set, as you can probably tell, but super concise, and I did get the job. And then about maybe 6 weeks later, I actually got an email through from CIPFA as well to say that I had also won a prize for being the top scoring student in my final test of professional competence.
Wow.
So I was like, oh my God, I could not believe it.
It's amazing.
Honestly, and I still to this day do not know how I got that. And I know a lot of people are a bit snobby about the accountancy qualifications and sort of... I honestly, I would choose CIPFA again. I think for me, that was a great route to go down because of the breadth that qualification offers. And obviously the role I was in, it was highly relevant to what I was doing at that point in time as well. So yes, that put me into a finance officer role, and then I was managing a team again, and, you know, I was taking much more strategic decisions as well. And it was great. But the other thing was, I'd always promised myself, because money had always been really tight, you know, and stuff, and I'd always promised myself when I was finished I was going to get myself a pair of Kurt Geiger shoes. I just wanted a pair desperately, and I got a check for £250 as well as the award, so that was my Kurt Geigers
paid for,
and I ordered them. And honestly, they were like 6-inch skyscrapers, tiny little heels, like a needle. And I tried them on and I couldn't walk in them. I still love my Kurt Geiger heels, so I do have quite a few pairs of them now. I do love them. They do these really bright rainbow coloured ones at the minute and stuff like that, and they sell a lot of Corvair stuff there as well, which I also love. My glittery trainers, you know, they're very much my vibe. So
I love it. I love it. And then you kind of you sort of moved out of the council. Were you director of...
So I was Treasury and Capital Manager when I left the council. So I did the finance officer role for quite a while, actually. I mean, I was at the council sort of 10 years, I think, in total. So it was quite a long time. So initially in the finance officer role, I did corporate services, which is sort of your central services, you know, your assessors and electoral registration, IT, finance, all that sort of stuff. But then I was asked to take on a slightly wider remit and also take on community and cultural services. So that was great because there's an element of commerciality in those services that included things like leisure and sports and stuff like that as well. So that was great. And again, worked with some amazing people there. Derek Ryan, who was the Director of Community and Cultural Services, was great to work with. Another person that really guided and mentored me and stuff. And also his business manager, Colin, I worked with very closely as well. So they were just, you know, great supports, and what really welcomed that sort of approach. I like to take a more involved approach than some of the other finance officers did, and, you know, really work closely with them. So they invited me to do that. I had to do a lot of public speaking in that role as well, because they used to get me to do budget holder training and things like that to quite big groups too. So again, really scary, but I did it, and it was always really well received and stuff. So I really liked those opportunities that presented. So I did that, and then the council restructured, and as part of that they decided to sort of bring together the capital, treasury and insurance and pensions functions within the finance section, and bring that under a single person. So there was a person there that was in quite a senior role, Andy, who, you know, was I guess you'd expect to maybe take it on. But I thought, no, do you know what? I'm going to go for that. I'm really interested in it, and yeah, I went for it. And Andy actually stepped back from it because he was near the end of his career. Didn't really want it. He knew it was expected that he applied for it, but he didn't really want it. So I was successful in gaining that role, and that involved leading a team of 10, and that was super interesting. So we looked after the pension fund. I mean, when I say looked after, I use that term loosely. Obviously, it's a real skill. So you work a lot with actuaries, and also investors. So different investment companies. We were pretty heavily invested into bonds and property and things like that. So and the capital programme. So at the time, lots of roads maintenance, as you can imagine, in the council. But we were also doing the Schools for the Future programme, which was a really big scheme that was about bringing new schools to the area, replacing a lot of the existing things, bringing together. So similar to what's happened at St Benedict's, bringing together schools on the same site and things, more efficient, less disruption for the young people as they maybe transition from primary to secondary and things. And so that was really, really interesting, and also the insurance function. And the team were great. I loved working with Andy. Sadly, I actually unintentionally delayed his retirement by leaving, which he wasn't very happy with me about. But yeah, that was a great role as well, and it was just very interesting, that role. And I had to, as part of the pension fund management, I was the lead officer there, so I used to have to go to committees, and it's very scary in a local authority setting because you have to sit on a table above everyone else, and the camera comes on you and all that sort of thing. So that again definitely helped me a little bit with the public speaking side of things and stuff as well. So if I could have done that job from here, I would have brought it with me because I loved it. But I met David and I loved him more. So that was what brought me down to West Cumbria.
And you kind of, when you weren't in work, I read somewhere that you did do some volunteering as well in the spare time that I'm sure you didn't have much of at this point.
So I volunteered at the local judo club. So I did. I did also do judo. So, I'm a tiny bit lethal, not very. I only got to my orange belt, but my second belt. And I didn't want to compete. There's only 2 weight categories in ladies, and you can imagine which one I fall into. So people tend to be massive. But I loved that. And there's a big drive to sort of get girls into judo, if anybody does have daughters and things, I would really recommend it. It's a great confidence builder, and I actually think it really suits women as well. One of the guys that used to train us, Bill, used to tell. So Luke, one of the trainers, was probably about 6'6" and about 20 stone, and little old me. And Bill, the other trainer, would say to me all the time, "Use your height to your advantage," and I'd be like, looking up at Luke thinking, what are you talking about? But actually there's something in that whole thing of size has nothing to do with bigness. Once you get somebody on the deck, you all measure the same. But it was very much about getting girls into the sport and things like that as well. So I think for them, having a female that was doing it, and also, for them, it was about the club being sustainable. So I helped them a lot with the governance side and just managing their memberships and things like that as well. So yeah, it was really good, and probably my kind of first sort of foray into volunteering and stuff like that as well. So I did enjoy that a lot. I didn't keep judo up when I moved here. I was always covered in bruises and things like that, and David was not very keen, so I just sort of didn't. But it was such a good release as well. That was the thing that I found with it. It's very intense when you're training, and I think it's like, for me, judo for me was probably what running is to some people and stuff like that, or yoga and things. It's that thing that you're so invested in that moment that you're in there, and then you're just not thinking about anything else. And that doesn't happen for me very often. I'm always thinking.
Yeah, so that's like, and then you've kind of alluded to sort of moving to Cumbria and then joining BEC.
Yeah. So I do think I was probably destined to end up in West Cumbria, and the reason being that when I went to the council, the other job that I'd been offered was at Chapel Cross, with Mawson's, and I didn't take it because it was an agency contract and they didn't have the training opportunities and things like that. But yeah, I do reflect on this, and I think maybe I was always meant to come here, because that was on the cards there. So I joined BEC. again, I actually went back to Heidi, who I dealt with at Hayes, but who had set up her own recruitment agency at this point in time, and we had a great meeting. It was good, but it was disappointing in some regards, because what she said to me is, because you've been in the local authority for 10 years, nobody in the private sector is going to touch you. You know, they want you to have like industry relevant experience and stuff. And I thought that this was crazy, because I was thinking, I have got such a broad skill set. I could take it to most sectors. I'm a quick learner. You know, to me, to be effective in the role I'm in, you've got to understand the business that you're working for. That's got to be priority number one when you start somewhere new. So she was like, no, you're talking public sector. You know, you need to be thinking about the council, the NDA, Sellafield, that sort of thing. But then she said, but there is this one company, you know, bit of a kind of hybrid. They're publicly owned, been through quite a difficult time because they'd had a fraud thing and stuff like that. So let's see. So I went for an interview at BEC. In fact, sorry, I didn't go for an interview at BEC. I actually met Michael and Nigel at North Lake. Gosh, this is dredging their brain cells a bit here. I met them at North Lakes just for a chat. They just wanted to meet people and sort of, you know, get a feel for you, see what you were like. And then they invited me to come for an interview. And as part of that, I had to do a bit of a sort of assessment, a presentation of what was the North Shore scheme at that point in time. I got pretty terrible feedback from Michael on my presentation, which was quite difficult. And we had a bit of back and forth there, and I left that interview and I was thinking, well, I haven't got that job. So I was really shocked when they phoned me up and they said, you know, we want to offer you the job. And I was like, they really wanted me to know what I was getting into, and so they did invite me back for a really informal discussion, Derek, just to let me know what they'd been through, where they were at that point, the fraud situation that had arisen. They'd had to do a lot of organisational restructuring, so they'd shedded quite a few staff. Obviously, that funding being withdrawn changed the model. They were left with quite a lot of liability. They'd just spent a lot of money buying a lot of land. Like, what do we do with all of this? So I found that from day one that was just this, like, let's just get everything out on the table. This is where we're at. It's going to be challenging. And well, that was like, great.
Love it.
I'm here. Where do I sign? So that was how I came to BEC.
Wow.
Not a very exciting story really, but yeah, that was how I came. And I actually delayed starting because my boss at the authority was quite poorly. And so they asked if I could stay a little bit longer, and BEC were really accommodating with that as well. So again, I think that told me a bit about the organisation in terms of that value alignment and, you know, where they were at and stuff. And I joined BEC, and for the first year I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I've done the right thing, because it was it was just so difficult, you know. It was lots of new people. You're in that kind of foreman stage, aren't you? Obviously Michael had recently taken up the helm at a very difficult time, so it was difficult, and there were a few times where I thought, gosh, I maybe should have looked at the council. Now I can you know, confidently say that it was a great decision, and I'm really proud to have sort of persevered through, and I think we've done some amazing stuff together, and I am really excited to you know, see what we do in the future as well.
It's really, really exciting.
Yeah.
So you've kind of had some highs, a little bit of lows, but most of all, I think you've highlighted that there was really some key people that supported you. Felt like they supported you throughout your career, or took you under their wing. As to say. So if there was sort of one thing that sticks out that was kind of the biggest challenge that you faced out of all that, when you look back, what would that look like, or what would you say that was, and how did you probably overcome it, or what did it teach you?
Gosh, honestly, I don't even really know, because I think I'm a bit weird like this, because I just see challenges as opportunities. I'm naturally a really optimistic person and stuff, so you know, probably in a moment I've probably seen this as like, oh my gosh, this is dead scary and stuff like that. I think it's the points where you get the crossroads is probably the thing. Like, do I take the job at Chapel Cross? Do I take the job at the council? You know, do we stay in Sunderland? Do we move over? And things like that. So I think it's, like I say, I like to think that I take calculated risks. You know, I'm not risk averse, but I do think about things. And I honestly, I don't think there's a wrong path. Do I think that if I took the job at Chapel Cross, I wouldn't be absolutely thrilled with where I would be? No, I don't think that. I think it would have still been great. I would have never known what the different outcome would be, because that's the reality. If it's past you, you'll never know. And I don't have any regrets about any of the choices that I've made and things. I think I'm lucky in that regard. And I don't know if that's just my mindset, but from somebody, like I say, who left school, really haven't let myself down quite a bit, and I could have done a lot better. I absolutely had the potential to do it, and I just was wasn't lazy. I didn't care. I didn't,
Yeah.
honestly, I didn't. I tossed it off. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I just thought, what, I'm not bothered. Unlike now, I was not clear on what the future opportunities were. I didn't really understand that there were things like
Yeah.
university.
Yeah.
Nobody talked about that. Nobody in my family has been to university or anything like that. So I didn't really know about stuff like that. So yeah, I think I can't even remember. I've gone off on a total tangent now.
You kind of felt like you'd let yourself down. I think that's what you said.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess from that point to now, I'm absolutely thrilled with where I am, and the opportunities that have come my way. And when people say to me, like, what do you want to be remembered as? I always say I want to be seen as a good role model, and that's because that's what I've had all the way through. These amazing role models, these amazing mentors, these people that push you, not too hard, but enough to make you uncomfortable, and get that growth and that potential
Yeah.
out of you. So that's what I want to be to other people as well. And I definitely try to do that. I mean, you'd have to ask the people that I work with about whether I'm successful with that and stuff, but that's certainly what I aim to be.
So would that then be, if you was to say that there's, this is why I do what I do, would it be seeing sort of, I know that Beck, you took on quite a few
Yeah.
apprentices, and there's been sort of younger people coming through the ranks, and I've met some of them, most of them, I think.
Yeah,
Would
you
that
have.
be one of the things that you sort of, this is why I do what I do, or would it be something else that gives you that sort of that
Yeah,
feeling?
I think in general it is about that, I think people have masses of potential, right? Everybody starts in life from a different place on that ladder and stuff. So without wanting to sound sort of bit crass or whatever, if you're halfway up the ladder already, generally speaking, you're going to be all right. Your life's going to be all right. So for me, it is about trying to level the playing field, to create lots of different opportunities for people from different backgrounds with different interests and different skill sets and stuff to be able to thrive. That's better for society at large. I want that, and I do have a lot of lived experience. And personally, I've been very, very lucky in terms of my own family unit and stuff like that. But there's been a lot of challenge there. Not all of my nieces and nephews necessarily are, have had as good a start and things like that as well. So why I do what I do is because I really, really passionately believe that you put a person in the right environment for that person, and you support them in the way that that person needs to be, and they will be amazing. And I don't think there's an exception to that. All right, but to use Einstein's thing, if you judge the fish by its ability to climb the tree, well, it's not going to be able to, is it? So I think that's the big thing for me, and I would like to see transformation, in schools and in the way that employers recruit and things like that really facilitate that. And you're seeing the signs around here, and it's exciting to be part of those conversations and stuff that are looking at how you can do that. And people have got to believe that they can. If you're always told, like, there's nothing for you, you're not going to succeed, people will start to believe that. You need to tell people that they can, and they will, and they can do what they want. I say it to our kids all the time: you can be anything you want to be. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, but you can be anything you want to be if you put in the effort. And so for me, that's why I do what I do. I want everybody to have that sort of that belief and self-confidence, and do the things that scare them, and and have choices and stuff like that, and not just fall into things. And and to love it. I genuinely love what I do, and whilst there's been lows, they're minuscule in the grand scheme of things. It's been, generally speaking, a series of really exciting highs, and even the difficult times, when you look back, you're like, I got through that. And I learned something from it, and I think there's something about that.
So if I was to put you on the spot, then, just to go back into what you said there, put you on the spot and say, if there was one thing you could change about sort of schooling or that whole education piece, what would that be?
I would do away with exams. Full stop. I do not think that training people to remember and regurgitate information is a skill.
Yeah.
I don't. Honestly, I think that we should really look at a broader curriculum, more vocational subjects, loads more work experience. People leave school and they're not always ready to go into the workplace. You know, they don't necessarily possess the soft skills and things like that. Now, some do, and I am generalising, but a lot don't. So for me, employers spend huge, you know, I'm a geek with my stats and stuff like that. It's millions and millions of pounds that employers have to spend every year in training people that have left school, college or university to be successful in their workplace. That's a gap that shouldn't exist. The whole point in education is to get your work ready, you know. So that needs to be looked at, that needs to be reformed. And I think it should be led a lot by employer and industry and, you know, what we're seeing as the kind of emerging sectors and the strong sectors in the UK and stuff like that as well. So yeah, I would get rid of exams, remove some of that stress from our young people, let them flourish and thrive.
Okay, that's quite bold. And then if you could tell younger Gemma one thing, what would it be?
I think I would tell myself to have a better work-life balance, actually. So I have been successful professionally, but I've definitely often prioritised work over other things. And so I think, as you said at the start, life gets serious very quickly. I would definitely tell myself to have more fun, let loose a little bit. Don't take life so seriously. You don't need to be the most normal Ari all of the time. You know, yes, there's an expectation being the oldest sibling and all that, but yeah, just go a bit more nuts. Do more silly stuff, you know.
And then I always ask everyone this question because it fascinates me, the debate that we have. But young people, would you say university or apprenticeship schemes?
I haven't been to university, so I feel unqualified to answer the question, to be quite honest. So on that basis, I have to say apprenticeship, because it worked for me. But I think there's lots of benefits. You get paid, your employer pays for your qualifications and stuff like that. So straight away, financially, that's great. You're not getting into loads of debt and things like that. You get to develop your soft skills very, very quickly. You know, you're working with other people, you're probably leading on things, you know, all of those skills that are massively important in life and in work. You build up, you know, but then, you know, people have great experiences through university and stuff like that as well.
A couple of people had been to university but still recommended
the apprenticeship route. It'd be great to see opportunities for apprenticeships for you know, for older people that maybe want to rescale or whatever, because they'll bring a lot with them.
Absolutely.
And that as well. So it would be good to sort of see those kinds of opportunities coming down the line. And obviously you can always study later on. My sister's just qualified as a social worker at 41. So, you know, there's in fact my godmother who recently passed away did her last degree when she was in her 70s.
Oh wow.
Yeah, just to show she could, because that's the kind of person that she was.
So last things from you, what is coming at BEC? What's the most thing can you tell us what's making you most excited at the moment?
There's a lot going on at the minute. I guess in the very immediate term, I'm so excited about Levels. You know, we're set to open later this year. The partnerships are getting really embedded. We've started ordering a lot of the technology, so that's really exciting. And I got to do a site visit this week to just see how things are coming on. So that was great. I mean, the team at Thomas Armstrong are doing an absolutely fantastic job. We worked with them on the bus station, so, you know, we've got a great relationship with them anyway. So just starting to see that transform, that's really, really exciting. You know, can't wait to see young people through the doors there, to host our first esports tournament there. And we've been having great conversations with British Esports and Meta and that around those, you know, around the delivery there. So that's really, really exciting. And, you know, I think for us, it's about how we transition as a business and continue that growth trajectory that we're on. You know, in terms of just building a bit more capacity in our business, getting access to finance to be able to bring forward some of our other developments and things as well. So, and then obviously a big one for me is our aspiration to bring a hotel to the area. So still working away at that. It's quite a challenging environment, as you can imagine, changing government, all that kind of thing. So, you know, we're still continuing discussions around that. And selfishly, I would like my family to be able to stay here instead of at that
Yeah.
on the harbour with lovely views. And I'm actually excited about the Edge opening as well, which is not a BEC project, granted. But yeah, really excited to see that. I know it's a bit of a love it or hate it thing. I personally think that architecturally, I think it's awesome. And a lot of the pictures make it look like this monstrosity, but when you really see it in situ, it's actually tiny. It's dwarfed by the cliffs around it and stuff. So that's really exciting. So yes, I'm excited to see those developments come forwards. Our occupancy at West Lakes is really high.
Amazing.
Maintaining that, just seeing that tenant growth, seeing our resident businesses doing well, seeing you guys in the bus station thrive. There's so much to be excited about. I couldn't actually pick one single thing, but Levels has kind of been my baby. And again, going back to that thing of like, giving people opportunities to explore different skills, interests, passions. Levels is going to offer a lot of that. So I'm really excited to see that sort of coming forwards and to seeing how the community welcomes that and how young people sort of get involved. So that's going to be great.
Love it. And then Gemma, what's coming? What's exciting? What's the 5 years time if we sat down and did this again? Where would we be? What's the big dream? Where are we going?
Honestly, I want to see all these developments come forward. So professionally, that's a big thing. But I think for me personally, I'd love to get my house finished. We've still got loads of work to do in the house and things like that. Ivy will be starting first school, so that'll be really weird. I'll be back at work full time. Whether I'll still be with BEC, I hope so, because there's so much exciting stuff coming down the line. I think there'll be something there. So that'll be really great. But I suspect we'll probably be almost empty nesters at that point, because our older daughters will be 21 then. So I imagine that they'll have probably moved out. It depends how comfortable we make it for them, doesn't it? They might still be at home, but I think they'll have moved away. So it would be nice to be spend a bit more time with my wider friends and family and stuff like that as well. So one of the benefits of an empty nest will be that we'll have some space for people to come and stay and things. So to spend a bit more time with my sisters and things like that as well. Yeah, and to travel a bit, Lindsay. I've always wanted to travel. That's the one thing that I wish I'd done more of when I was younger. David and I were quite excited about all our kids getting older, that we were going to have all of this freedom. Obviously we don't have that now, so Ivy's just going to have to be a backpack kid that like comes around with us and stuff like that. Maybe go to some festivals and things again like I used to when I was younger. So honestly, nothing that exciting. I think as I've got older, I don't know, I'm content with life. I'm so blessed. Like I've got great family and friends, a job that I love, financially secure, dream house. I love my house. It's just great. Garden also lush. There's nothing that I'm like really like feel is missing. And that's an amazing place in life to be. Long may that continue. Grandkids down the line. But can wait a good 10 years or so for that. I'd like to be retired when they come along. But yeah, that's it really.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that feels like a really nice rounded place to sort of end our podcast there. So thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for joining us as well. Don't forget to give us a like, a comment, or a share, and we will see you in the next episode very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.